Hello, my name is Mandolin Royal, and today we're processing an unlucky number 13 cockerels that need to get out of the pens so I can use the pens, and they are of age. But there's some backstory here, and I'm curious to see what these results are going to be like. So these three are from my own flock of my own breeding, and they are 12 weeks old. And it feels like, based on how they handled, it's going to be worth processing them. Now, the other 10 birds that we're doing today are from a local friend of mine who bred a Mississippi male, 6.5 pounds, over my bigger stock hens. And he brought me 10 cockerels to try out, evaluate, see how they are. And there's a difference in body structure, mostly in the body width. There's only one guy, this one here, that seems to have gotten pretty good width. But I'm not crazy about his tail, his wings, his comb. He did pick up white earlobes, but I still haven't found a way to eat those. So when I'm looking at them structurally, let me see if they're going to let me get an above look. Actually, that guy in the back looks wider from this angle. Not as developed, but there's some width in there. Gonna let me check out your depth? All of them are pretty shallow in the chest. What about you? Oh, you're squirrely. That is not the look we're going for. That is a serious lack of body depth. But if you look at their heads, they're not bad. Only one got the good earlobes. Combs are a very mixed bag. But you're gonna have that. These guys are 15 weeks old. They're starting to get a little bit more competitive. They're starting to crow. Their hormones are coming out. So right now we're at peak tenderness before they start toughening up more. And like I said, I need this pen. We'll see what they look like once they're dressed out. Over in another grow pen, I have 5 more. But the difference in shape, just by using a different male over the same genetic pool of females, I wish I had more documentation. These guys are still going to taste like chicken, though. That one doesn't look too bad, but the wings, that side looks good. Still shallow in the chest, though. So we'll see them side by side between my young guys and these older ones, and we'll take notes on any differences in body structure. But in the meantime, I'm going to pull these out, make them easier to catch. Then I'm going to clean these pens out, and then we're going to move some chicks in here. So back to work. More on this in a second. Some other chores going on today is I needed these 2 other brooders, and I did some condensing. So I pulled my 3 boys from this grow pen, and this is the pen where the ever-loved hybrid pellet lives. So she got new friends. She kept 2 of her old friends. She's busy dust bathing since I refreshed with peat moss, and they love how fluffy it is, and usually the first thing they do is start dust bathing. So those cockerels there are her new friends. They were introduced 5 minutes ago. So this is how that's going, and I love her chicken on chicken temperament, even if she is kind of mean to me sometimes. She's still good with the other birds. So this is one pen done, everything refreshed and refilled. Now it's on to cleaning out brooders, cleaning out more pens, and moving some more birds around while I wait on the scald water to warm up. For us, it takes like an hour and a half for it to get up to the 150 temperature we're looking for. So I just do chores while I wait on that to happen. So back to work. All right, well, it took us an hour and a half to process 13 birds between the two of us. I put mine in this smaller cooler. There was one that was a little squirrely and two that looked fantastic. The other 10, plus the dog treats, I put in this cooler. And it was a mixed bag, which that's expected. This one looks pretty good. But I'm gonna move on to pen cleaning and then weighing the chicks from Recreational Homestead, moving them into their much bigger spaces. And then we'll do a side-by-side of our harvest results today, because this is what it's all about. And at this point, I'm just procrastinating again. But on to pen cleaning and the other tedious part of my chore list today. So back in a minute. All right, the first pen is done, and I have it all set up to take in the first batch of the chicks from Recreational Homestead. So those guys are turning 5 weeks old today. It's time for another weigh-in and to calculate some more about their feed uptake and their FCR for their feed conversion rate. But they're coming out of 12 square foot and moving into 32 square foot. And that is for 14 to 15 chicks. Since it's an odd number of 29, it'll be either 14 or 15 coming in here. And this is going to see them through for another 2 to 3 weeks, and then we're going to go into a much bigger space again. We are also doubling their feeder space. They were using a single with their age and their growth and their consumption. Now we're back into double feeders. So that's the status of that so far. But depending on how long it takes them to go through 1 gallon of water, I'll upsize them to a 5-gallon bucket with cups on it to reduce some of the labor there. But the other pen, it's roughly the same foot, just a different shape, and the dimensions will still work for their space needs. Because one thing you don't want to do is crowd these birds on top of each other. They just don't cope with that well, and it causes stress. It reduces your harvest weights. There's a lot of problems that can come from that. So if you're in doubt, give them more space. All right, now to the tedious part of weighing them before I move them in here, because this is going to make them a little trickier to catch. But don't worry, I have a plan for that to make it easier. We're going to see this through all the way to processing age. We're going to take a look at them at 14 weeks, 16 weeks, 18 weeks. We're going to see what we get. So back to work. So here is what 14 chicks look like in 32 square foot. They have room to get around and do their chicken thing, but as they gain size, this space won't last for long. So it's a good thing I have a plan into a much bigger building. Now, for week 5, this first group, there's our weights in ounces. And Y6 and BL5, they felt incredible. So I'm pretty sure those are the 2 favorites from last week and the week before that. So these guys may end up being all-around favorites once we're through this. They've been in here for about 3 seconds, already into the feeder. Already making a mess and causing drama. So like a chicken. Alright, now for batch 2. Batch 2, weighed and put into their much bigger pen. It does cut around the corner there for several feet. But it's important to note that these guys are now officially off heat at 5 weeks old. We are going to still be a little bit cool, mid-40s as our overnight lows, but these guys are going to be just fine since they are fully feathered. And I do really appreciate the genetics that are faster to feather in, because it means you can move through the grow out process and get them off heat much sooner. So the batch 2 weights, Mr. Standout, he was a favorite last week with the paler colored feet, but still 20.5 ounces at 5 weeks old. We've got a couple who exceeded the 1 pound mark. This is looking pretty nice. So these guys are already in here making their little mess. But now it's time to get into our processing results, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about body structure. So as we watch these babies grow up, we can start deciphering their structure and what that's going to translate to in a shrink bag, and what traits are absolutely worth selecting for early, consistently, in every batch, so that you can get to way better table results, especially if you have an eye on that marketability in sort of the commercial sense of selling your processed birds to potential strangers or restaurants or farm to table type situations. There's a lot of different options because everybody eats chicken, and I'm gonna teach you the ways of developing your own flock and making your own really good chicken. So let me wash my hands and sanitize everything, and then we'll start looking at some carcasses. Some that I bred and some that are gifted just to do an evaluation on. So we'll get to that part with the feedback here in a second. Well, this is interesting. Here is today's haul that took us an hour and a half to do if we don't count setup time and cleanup time. So really we've got like 3 hours into this, but only an hour and a half was into the actual processing part. Now, the top 3 birds here, I grew myself from my own pens. The bottom row of 10 here came from a local friend who wanted me to check them out, get my thoughts over it, and here we are. Right off the bat, I noticed there's a difference in coloration. Mine are looking pinker, and these are more white. Now, the backstory from earlier in this video, this row of 10 are out of my hens that he got from us, and the male he used to develop this batch and the ones that he kept for his own table, those were out of a much smaller 6.5 pound male from Mississippi. These two are looking pinker. But anyways, the weights between 12 weeks and 15 weeks and that difference of genetics, what does that mean for our actual yield? So these weights are the birds in order. I did have one small one, that 2 pound 5 ounce, and when I got in and I was removing the insides, the gizzard was not shaped like normal, and it seems to have not been getting enough grit, causing a little backlog, which would then show as a lack of gain, because for whatever reason that bird was deciding not to take in as much grit as he needed to digest the feed. It's amazing what you see and what you learn when you process your own birds. I'm not changing a thing in that regard. So top left, 3 pound 6 ounce. My little guy, 2 pound 5 ounce, 3 pound 7 ounces at 12 weeks old. Now at 15 weeks old, this is another 3 weeks of growth. I grew them those last 3 weeks. They were grown at the other farm for the first 12 weeks. 3 pound 15 ounces. That's our biggest one right there. 3 pound 3 ounce, 3 pound 6 ounce, 3 pound 9 ounce. See the trend here? 3 pounds, some change, a couple pushing 4 pounds. But my 12-week-olds are in that same neighborhood. So that's the difference that can be made with your breeding choices. Which male do you use and why do you use them? And which females do you use and why are you using them? Because that parent stock has everything to do with what you can hope to achieve for your results. Now, in these evaluation videos, you're going to hear me talk a lot about back-end bone spacing. And when the feathers are off, it's a lot easier to tell. So on either side of where the vent would be here, there's going to be 2 pointy little bones here. And this bird has a good 2.5 finger width. And this is our bigger bird now out of that group. The end of the keel to those pin bones, that's a nice 3 fingers there. This one was tighter, exactly 2 fingers, 3 fingers. There was one of these that was pretty tricky to get inside. That one's almost 3. That's like 2 3/4. This one was really tight. And when those little bones dig into your wrist, when you're up there trying to remove lungs and stuff, that's where it gets annoying. This one was also real tight. That one was pretty tight. Also tight. Now, let me move some of these out of the way without scrambling them. I do want to keep track of who is who. Generous 2, almost 3 fingers. 3 fingers, 12 weeks. This is the little one. Not bad for a little bird. The spacing is actually quite generous for the smallest bird on the table that didn't even hit 3 pounds. This one was tighter than desired, but not bad looking. Still gonna taste like chicken. Now, as far as the fleshing and the keels and the other stuff going on here, these birds did have really nice long bodies. It's probably safe to say it came from my females, because I do appreciate long bodies, deeper chest, and that chest depth. See how it kind of comes inward a little bit on that keel to where the thigh is? On a deeper chested bird, you're going to get more of that protrusion of the breast meat. And this is all about developing the frame for the meat to go on, because without a good frame, you're not going to get a good spread of meat. This one was within the mid-range for weight, but a little bit narrow, and the fleshing kind of fizzles out on some of these, because when you're feeling on them and you're handling them, it's all about what it feels like on that underside of the bird. And the sooner you can identify calls and the sooner you can bring them into the freezer, the more efficient your flock is going to run, and the more profit potential there's going to be in them without wasting your resources. Nice. So I'm going to go ahead and get these put into shrink bags. We're going to be bagging in the house today because we ran out of propane, because we didn't do a propane inventory before we got started. But not bad results. I moved around a lot of birds. I did my due diligence on weighing our feed trial chicks from Recreational Homestead. They moved on to bigger and better spaces. And as we get closer to processing age for them, we're going to be seeing this type of results from what we got from Michigan. And I'm pretty excited because some of those birds felt and handled like they're going to perform a lot better than this. But I did think it was really interesting to see the weights versus mine being 12 weeks and these being 15 weeks. And they did not get special finishing. They just got regular old grower feed for the duration. Nothing special, nothing fancy. And I feel like that had a big impact on their lack of fat. There's really not much fat in here. So these would be birds. Well, there's some on mine. These would be birds that would benefit from a nice coating of oil. My little one didn't get the fat, so that one's going to need butter when I cook it. This one's going to baste up just fine on its own. But the rest of these, to get that juicy table result, if they don't have a lot of fat to melt down and be that self-basting bird, you do want to use a recipe that involves some vegetable oil or butter, lard, whatever your choice of fat is, just to ensure that juicy result. But I far prefer it already be in the bird and let it do its own basting and its own juices. So these next couple of batches, they're going to get the finishing feed developed by Jeff over at Fertrell, manufactured by Kraut Creek, and we're going to see what those table results are like. So more on this later. Feel free to like and subscribe as I show you how to chicken better.